This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, and welcome to Chance of a Lifetime Conversations with Carolyn. This is an amazing evening. We have such a phenomenal guest with us this evening. We have with us Miss Malecia Griffin. Miss Malecia Griffin, she is the CEO, she is the owner of Gold Leaf Consulting. And she is a new mother. She's a new mother of 6 children. She resides in San Antonio, Texas. And she is the author of Year of She Arrives. We're going to get into a lot of that and a lot about Mrs. Griffin, but she's coming to you today with a lot of information, lots of awareness, and we will hear her story as she is a trauma health coach. Welcome, Malecia. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well.
Awesome. Well, Malecia, we know about the Rags to Riches story. They're meant to motivate, and they show just anybody that anybody can achieve their dreams, no matter how much money their parents had in the bank, no matter how what their younger childhood circumstances were, what kind of dead-end jobs, what they had to do to pay rent. Tonight, we're just going to talk about your story. We want to hear about your story. And if you've always had it, wonderfully, Jewel, let us know how you did it. But if you had those circumstances in your childhood or growing up, even in young adult life, that may have caused some situations to turn, some situations to shift. Regardless of how fabulous you're looking tonight, Malecia, we want you to talk to us tonight. Tell us about your story. And we want to know what motivated you to start putting energy into achieving your dreams. So, Malecia, tell us, who are you?
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you again, Carolyn, for having me on tonight. My name is Malecia Griffin. I am a wife and a mother, and I have a little one right here. So if you hear him cooing, he's right here below me. I am a trauma coach. So I'm a health coach that specializes in trauma, and my passion is sexual trauma, but I do assist with all types of trauma, because it can come in any form. I am the author of Year She Arrives. I reside in San Antonio, Texas, and I've been here for about 8 years now. I grew up military, so I moved around quite a bit, but my husband and I have been here for a while now.
Awesome. So you, being I think I heard you say you're military, so you moved around, you've had a lot of different changes and transformations that undoubtedly occurred across your journey. Tell us about your life goals. What impacted you to do what you do now? You mentioned you've written the book, The Year of She Arrives. Talk about that a little bit.
So that book was birthed from my experiences with my own personal trauma. A lot of times we don't recognize. My children, I am so sorry.
You're good.
A lot of times we don't recognize. Okay, thank you. A lot of times we don't recognize that we have our own personal trauma until it really hits us like a brick. And so that book was birthed after a very traumatic situation in my marriage that happened. We experienced infidelity, and it was through that journey that God really began to speak to me, taking me back to the basics of where all of my issues really started to occur. So I went back and started really with my separation with my father. And so the book is a journey through my own personal trauma. It's a testimony, but in it is teaching. So it teaches how I overcome each obstacle and how God brought me through those experiences, and then practical things on how we can all overcome it as well, because it's not just about me, it's for all of us.
Absolutely. And I hear you talking about trauma, being a trauma coach, and I wanted you to describe to us, what does trauma look like? And if you would care to elaborate, you talked about some trauma in your childhood, if you would like to go into some of that. And I say that because there's so many stories, and believe it or not, as you're speaking, there were some stories resonating within me that it's pivotal. It's an awakening moment, and somebody out there needs to hear that regardless where you are now, it's really okay in spite of all the what you may have gone through. So speak to us. Describe what trauma looks like.
Well, first off, trauma is, in a nutshell, trauma is when you have had a painful situation happen to you or experience and you have not been able to heal from it. And so this experience has been able to linger with you, and it causes you to go throughout life and react in various ways. So it can have many faces and many looks. A lot of times when we hear trauma, we think about people who are, down and just desolate all the time. But in reality, a lot of people that have trauma are very successful. They look put together. They are maneuvering through life, and you think that they have it all together. But when they go home at night, that is furthest, yes, from the truth. And so for me personally, my trauma stemmed from I think the entry point that I recognized, because when I was healing, I kind of went backwards, was I was molested at about 5 years old in a child care center. So not only did it happen in a child care center, it happened in it was a public place, and it was a row of girls, and it was happening to all of us at the same time. Oh, I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to hear that. And so that process was very difficult for me. It was something that I actually blocked out for a long time. It would come back in spurts and pieces, but it wasn't something that I just, knew that, okay, this is bothering me. A little bit later on in life, when I got into high school, I actually was raped by a boyfriend of mine who was a friend. And so these two experiences really shaped who I was. I began to become a very mean person. I was really focused on success as far as how I looked and how I was perceived by people, because my success was my mask. So I was always making sure I was put together, always making sure I looked right, always making sure I was excelling, whether it was in school or work or anything of that nature, so that I could mask what I was really going through. And I became more of a person who would block people out. So I had this circle of people that I could deal with. But if you were in that circle, I didn't want anything to do with you. And I had no idea that the reason why I became that person is because I was those are fragmented pieces of all of the things that I had dealt with. So they were defense mechanisms.
And so I'm hearing you say that they came in spurts. There were moments that you realized something's happening here. Did you know that you were being affected as severely, or did you think it was just a part of a phase of life?
I thought that was who I was.
Okay.
I thought, this is the girl I am. I like to look good. I like to excel in life. And if I don't like you, I don't like you. And that's just who I was. It was a lot of the transitions in my life. Like I said, I grew up military, so wasn't able to plant roots. I was always on the move. We moved every 2 years. So a lot of that was not only just me, because that's another form of trauma in itself, but that's another, but I was taking on pieces from the various places that I spent time, the different hurts that I had in these different places, the different people that I encountered, always having to relearn a place or a situation. And so I was taking on pieces from all of that, and all of those things shaped who I thought I was. And then also not having my father played a big role in that, because that abandonment, that disconnect from not having that person that shapes the foundational understanding of who we are, really hindered my ability to process who God was. So that was a major factor as well, because I really didn't have how could I really fully understand the role that God played in our life, even in youth, if I had no one to relay that role to, if that makes sense?
Yes, it makes totally perfect sense, because even in the world of connection, there was a huge disconnect. Because even though you said that you didn't have a relationship with your father, was there any type of father figure? Was there a stepdad, an uncle, or granddad?
Yes, so I had my grandfather who I was able to go see a few times a year actually, because I would go back to my home, which was Georgia, my mother's home where she's from. So I was able to go back there every summer and even during the holidays. So I have my grandfather and I have my stepfather who was amazing. He came into my life when I was 10, and we hit the ground running because my mother deployed right after getting married. And so it was me and him, and we had to learn how to grow and live together. And I froze. Are we here?
Yeah, okay.
We're
Okay,
here?
yes, you did freeze, and I thought it was me. So okay, so you were saying that you had an opportunity to go visit your grandfather.
Yes, so I spent every summer and a lot of the holidays in Georgia. So I
Okay,
had my grandfather, and then also I have a stepfather who came into my life when I was 10 years old. And
okay.
so we are very, very, very close. We are extremely close. And we have been like two peas in the pod, and he really, you wouldn't know any different if you didn't, if you were on the outside looking in. So yeah.
But wonderful, and that sounds so comforting to know that even on that journey, when we have that loss of sensitivity and that loss of belonging, we don't have that supplement to put in our lives as
Mhm.
another caring figure like your father. So even though, like you said, you have that wonderful relationship now, there was still that innate nature that had you feeling about your biological father and the absence of. So can you go back and remember when was that aha moment, that moment that was kind of like that light bulb moment? It was your discovery moment of this is what's going on and this is what I need to do. Or did you know what to do when you realized that?
Um, no, and it's emotional even now thinking about it. But when my husband and when I infidelity, it was very traumatic for me because I had placed my husband, he was filling all of these holes that I didn't know were holes. We
Mhm.
get these wounds and we don't know we have them, and then we find
Yes,
somebody to latch onto, and they fill all
yes,
these holes, the areas that God is supposed to fill. And then when something happens, we are left with bigger wounds, and we're wondering, what do I do? I'm lost now, literally
yes,
lost.
yes,
And
right.
so when that happened, I remember feeling very upset and basically telling God, why would you let this happen to me? And since you did, I'm just going to live my life how I want to live my life, because I've been a good person. This is what I told God. I've been a good person and all these
Yes.
things, and you let me experience this. I think we had 4 children no, 5 children at that point when I found out. And so you're talking about, we had a lot of history together.
Yes.
Um, and so when that happened, I didn't hear God's voice for about 3 days straight. And I didn't know that I had been hearing God's voice prior to that. So I had no idea that, God's here, ministering to me, guiding me, all these things in my life until that happened. And when I didn't hear anything, I heard life, but not him. I was like, whoa, what just happened? I remember what I did, and I repented. And when his voice came back, it came back like a flood. And it was a series of heart work. The very first thing I heard was, tell your husband what happened to you. And I was like, what happened to me? And all I could remember, I started having memories of the molestation,
Wow.
right? And I'm like, where is this coming from? And so
Yes.
I was like, okay. I told him what happened. And from that point on, it was like a gush of healing. Really
Mm.
didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was hindering me. I didn't know that's why I made the decisions I made. I didn't know that's why I was so driven to perfection. That's what it was. And that drive for perfection had me isolate the very person who I chose to marry. Now, I'm not excusing his behavior, okay? But what I'm saying is
Of
when
course.
we are, when we're wounded and we're driven that way, we become
Hmm.
really independent. We want to control our life. We want to control everything around us because it makes us feel safe. Like, if I can
Absolutely.
control these elements, then I'm good. Um, and so that
Absolutely.
level, yeah. So that level of control had me isolate him. And that isolation led him to try to fulfill what was lacking somewhere else. But even in
Yes.
that, God was speaking to me about me, because the more I forgave him, that's how God healed me. That's the
Wow.
only really, it's very, it might sound weird explaining it, because some people may not understand. But the more that I forgave him, the more God could show me the wounds, right? I'm getting emotional.
That
Sorry.
is no, you are absolutely in a
Oh
great
my goodness.
place, and it is the good place because here's what's happening. There is a moment of that every mask that we wear, and there's a curriculum I have on this, but there's a moment that regardless of the mask that you wear, and I'll use us as beautiful women, we're both, our faces are flawed, the makeup is in all the right places. But before we retire for tonight, we're going to go in that bathroom and we're going to use removers and we're going to remove all of this, the foundations. We're going to remove the powders. We're going to remove the mascara. We're going to remove the lipstick, and all that's going to be left is us in the raw. And this is how we will present ourselves once again to the man that we love, whether we have husbands in our homes or whether we have maids, significant others, or even if you're going to bed alone, you're going to have to get this off, because if it doesn't, it sets up toxins, you get bumps, and it's just going to continue to irritate the skin and the body. I said all that to say this. Thank you, Malecia, because what it is showing people that's listening tonight is transparency. You allowed yourself to be transparent with your feelings, with your husband, and most of all, your transparency with God. Because had you never opened up to God, even in all of your complaining, you still open your heart up. See, our mouth can say one thing, but our heart is totally different. And I'm a firm believer that God always honors the heart, because our mouths get us in trouble so many times. But Malecia, you said something very, very important. You said it wasn't until you yourself began to tell your husband and once again began to articulate. And once again, even with our mouths are so powerful. And so you articulated the hurt, you articulated the dysfunction. And as
Mhm.
you articulated the dysfunction, it was that spirit of kenosis. You was emptying all that bad stuff out. And God just put all the good stuff in,
Back in.
back in. That is amazing. And
It is.
to share your story, like you said, you were getting emotional. And I think emotion is just, it's a part of our spiritual wellness, and that a wellness will, you're very familiar as well. Emotional attachment, emotional peace is so vital to our spiritual wellness, to our overall wellness. So I hope someone is out there is listening to what Malecia is saying and listening to the fact that it's okay to release. So
Mhm.
as you release, how did it make you feel? Do you remember? We can kind of see how it feels today, but
Yeah.
can you remember how you felt when that self-discovery came, when that illuminating moment came, and you decided this was a different junction for you?
I cried so much. First, I was angry. Like, what? But I cried so much, and it took me to dig in. I had to dig in. And I think sometimes we pray so much and we ask God, do it for me, do it for me. And God is saying, I need you to partner with me. I didn't create you so that I could do everything. I created you, I set things in motion.
Mhm.
God can't take away the evil that's already in the earth, right? And I think that's the hard part with people. They think that because evil is here, he's not God. No, it's here. He's still God, and he created us to already do. The body's going to do what it's supposed to do regardless.
Mhm. Yes.
Um for me, I had to partner with him and believe that if I released, because that control piece says keep hold of this, right?
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
I release this, then I can be free somehow. The
Mhm.
hardest part is the release. So telling him this happened to me, even having to be vulnerable enough to say, like, look, I went through something when I'm so mad at you. I'm mad at him right now. I don't want to talk to you about
Right.
anything vulnerable because I need to be hard. I need to be mad. So,
Right.
because
Right.
that is an intimate thing to release to someone. So for those instructions to come and for me to have to do that in a moment where I was trying to keep things in, it broke everything. It broke. And at the time, I didn't understand what I was doing. Now I can put pieces to it and explain it, But at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. Now I understand that level of intimacy was necessary because it allowed my heart to be vulnerable. It took me way back to the basis of where this started. And then when I
Right.
was able to do that, now my heart was open to be able to do all of the layers of other things that happened. There were so many layers of things that I had to work through, not just about that molestation, but even about the trauma with the transitions, the trauma. Okay, you're back. Okay, you had froze for a second. The trauma of the relationship with my mother that I did not appreciate, and I did not feel like it was what I would have wanted it to be, because she worked so much. And so and I was the only child. So I grew up feeling isolated. I grew up feeling abandoned, even though I didn't know I felt isolated and abandoned. I I just I didn't know until that happened. So I was able to work through things. And I think that we don't recognize that when the Bible says, Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his will. I gotta say that part. When the Bible says that, it's saying that God can use any situation in our lives, right?
Yes.
You may think,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I just went through infidelity. This is a violation. Goes against what
Mhm.
God has said. But God is saying, I'm still going to use that to make you better, to heal you. And in return, I'm going to heal your husband. And in return, I'm going to make sure your children
Yes.
don't have to do. And so trauma, the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I have seen what it doesn't start or stop with you. It is so layered. There are so many pieces to it. And there is a spiritual side as well as a practical side. And a lot of times we try to just tackle the practical side. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do?
Mhm.
Not recognizing that, like you said, when you release sound, when you release things through your mouth, you are activating something that will then
Yes.
allow all of these other things to happen or to transpire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're so absolute on how you are articulating how the whole transmission of trauma works. And I'm just mindful now of how it is that you were able to take a situation that could have totally destroyed you, your family, your children, and but you allowed God to be that foundation, and from that foundation, he was able to build you again. And I want someone out there to hear how it is that Malecia broke down how she said she was so used to herself being in control, controlling her looks, controlling her ladder of success, controlling her business acumen, controlling all of that. And then when it came to the point of even in the relationship, she felt she had to have some type of control. And one thing about it is we cannot control other grown people. But at the same time, there comes a point when you are married to someone, when you decide to make that connection with someone, you have to customize that thing. It's not going to work just like mamas did, like daddies did, like grandmamas did, like, you know, the Obamas and Bella. It's not going to work. Everybody's situation is unique. So I want somebody that's listening tonight to understand how important and how critical it is that you allow you and your mate to be genuine to one another, and how transparency. Malecia has spoken a wonderful illustration. She just talked about how the illustration of breaking it all the way down. But when that foundation was built back up, it was built even stronger, and it created a solid foundation. Because you don't know, as you said, Malecia, you said something extremely vital. Even in your brokenness, you were able to mend your husband. And that's how God does things, in a way that we can't fix it ourselves. It's definitely an opportunity for God to work and work like none other, because we can't do it. He does it all. Malecia, okay, I'm just exuberating with all this energy, because this needs to be told. Because, you know, we're so quick to walk away. We're so quick to how can I so quick to becoming independent, pardon me. We're so quick to becoming independent. And so we lose sometimes the value of how authentic our family units are, and how even it for once, it may not be infidelity for me, but it may be spending habits. And you know, if just say if my husband came up, you know, in an era where they didn't have much, spending is going to be a problem for him, because he's always going to want to hold on to it. And for me, I'm like, okay, well, I'll get some more. But that's still a part of a disconnect. And so being able to break all of that down, how is it that you've been able to portray or give your personal insight to other women?
You know, the biggest thing I think that holds us up is unforgiveness. Unforgiveness keeps your heart hard. It makes you not able to even allow anything or anyone to get in. The biggest thing that God has demonstrated to me is the power of forgiveness. Carolyn, there was a baby that came out of that situation. So we have a bonus baby. I'm getting emotional, but we have a bonus baby.
That's fine. Yes.
Somebody would hear this situation and think, what in the world? But it was God, because through each thing that happened, through each child that's born, God is breaking something. I think also what we don't realize, you just alluded to this, generationally, there are things, generational trauma that we don't even know we're battling when we come out of the womb. So neither one of my husband or myself did not see our mother and our father together, married in the same household. My parents divorced when I was 4. So I have divorce in my family as well. I don't remember my have memories of them, but I don't have what a household would look like according to the standard that God would say. You have your mother, your father, you know, you're married.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Neither one of
Yeah.
us had that. There was no
Yeah.
blueprint. So you have now generational things coming in, habits, right?
Hmm.
These are habits that you
Yes.
think you're just doing stuff. You don't realize it is a spiritual bloodline curse. You don't
Yes.
realize that the enemy wants to present things to destroy certain
Hmm.
elements. And so helping other women realize that, number one, you're fighting more than you know. You're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for
Yes.
your generation, that God has chosen you to go through this because there is so much greater out there, to get outside yourself, because
Yes.
trauma makes us isolate within ourselves, to understand that your heart is the most important thing. It
Yes,
is the
it
most
is.
vital organ. The Bible says that all things flow from it. And if it is congested, if it is beating irregularly, all of these things impact the rest of your body. Whatever you're thinking is coming from what's housed in your heart. And so whatever you're saying is coming from what's housed in your heart. And so that those are the areas that I'm passionate about. I'm definitely passionate about the heart, forgiveness, and letting women know that you got to get beyond you. And you have to be able to get beyond you in order to see yourself, because I couldn't see myself until I got beyond me. I had to see him in order to see me. It's wild, but
But you're so right. And here's the other part to that, Malecia, is that in your brokenness, your energy was not positive. So
mhm,
I don't care how much we look good, how much you were flawless, how many degrees, how many, regardless of any of that, your brokenness, the energy of your brokenness was still there. So what it did was attracted brokenness, not your husband as
mhm.
being broken, but his brokenness, because there is something of that law of attraction. Now, law of attraction goes beyond what you think is what you bring to you, and what you say is what you bring. That is powerful within itself, but it also works in the opposite. It also works if you have low vibrations, if you have low self-esteem, if you have those things that are going on inside of you, it's still going to come out in some form or another. And we have a lot of broken relationships. We have a lot of flawed relationships because we have not dealt with the true self. We have not dealt with everything that is in the intricate fibers of who we are. So when that happens, we have to deal with, and there is a fact that a lot of people will spend decades in brokenness and never realize what was really going on. And some marriages will dissolve, some will stick together, some will not be healthy. But it all stems to what you said. And I think we as a community must integrate therapy of some form. If you don't get the therapy in a in the in a practical way, get it holistic, get it spiritual, but don't listen to Betty Sue and Betty Ann. You have got to get to, because sometimes you just got to watch who you listen to. But I, I think it's important. So talk to us, Malecia, about your women's groups, about your outreaches, because I hear you say, and you're absolutely right, it starts with the heart. But I do know that you reach out to women, and you use your practices for healing mechanisms. Would you talk to us about that?
Yes. So I recently have written an ebook called The Combatives of Spiritual Warfare, and it is inspired by my time in the Army. And so God has really given me the grace to be able to explain and teach on spiritual warfare from a standpoint of a soldier in the army. And I think that that's very important, because when we are getting ready to heal, we're going to have to fight. We're going to have to fight to get free
Yeah,
when we've been in bondage for so long. And there are
absolutely.
tools that we can use to fight with. And so the ebook is with, I have a course with it, and that is really where I start now. I have kind of shifted a lot of things to, that is the first place that I send women, because if we're going to work together, I need you to understand what's going to come with it. That the enemy is not just going to allow you to walk out of his grip. And we have
Ooh,
to be honest
yes.
with ourselves when we have trauma, because I deal with the spiritual and the practical side of things. When we have trauma, it first is a spiritual battle that then manifests in the natural. And a lot of times we don't realize that the trauma that we deal with, whether it come from overeating, whether it come from overspending, whatever manifestation you are doing, is a result of something that has happened to you spiritually. So I start there, and then after that we get work together. And I have two programs. I have a 4-week program and a 6-week program, where we actually take it and we actually dissect these things. We start off with your triggers. What are the things that you see that are provoking you every day? And then we scale that back to actually getting into the heart, to finding out where the roots of these things are, and then work to change the mind on how you're thinking, how you're processing, and going from there. And so it's a phenomenal program, because God is good, and we have to start with God. That's just it. Everything I do, I start with him first, because it is only through him that I was healed, that I was transformed. I can't say I healed my heart. I can't say I forgave on my own. I'm gonna tell you, I was selfish and I wanted to control my life until God said no.
As we all do, as we all do. Perfect, perfect analogy, as we all do. So thank you, Malecia. You have granted us with so much wealth. And I trust that everyone that had an opportunity to tune in, I want you to go back and replay this. I want you to hear it again. I want you to share it with someone. And Malecia, if you could, what advice would you give to others who are listening? They have a story. They are being impacted by their revelations tonight as they were listening to you. How would you tell them to write the version of themselves?
I would say start with, I would really say go to God and ask him to show me you. Go to God and
Mhm.
just say, God, get me naked before you and show me me. Show me where I'm wounded. Show me where I am not who you created me to be. Because, like I said a while back, my identity became the trauma, and it became the people that I met through the trauma.
Mhm.
But that's not who I was. My identity through him
That's
only
right.
came after I allowed myself to be stripped. And so we want to get to the root of who God created us to be. And so that's what I would say. I would go to God and say, God, show me who I am. Show me who you, and when God starts to show you who he created you to be, and that's not going to come, it may not always come through a voice of him saying this. It may come through an experience tomorrow. It may come through a trigger, a violation, something that you feel like, oh, this is making me upset. This is making me angry, or this is agitating me. But that's God poking you, saying, hey, try and get your
That's
attention.
right.
This is what I want you to pay attention to. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. And that is such a heavy piece that I trust that everyone will have an opportunity to grab a hold on. Regardless of what you've heard tonight, I don't want you to think that it's too heavy for you, because Malecia has made the heavy road smooth. It's heavy, but it's a big weight that is carried by God. You're already on his wings. All you have to do is just soar. That's all you have to do is soar. I want to thank you, Malecia, tonight. And you have the book. It's Year of She Arrives, and it's available on Amazon.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's Malecia Griffin, Malecia Griffin, Year of She
All right.
Arrives. I
Yes,
want you
ma'am.
to
Mhm.
and I want you to go and get it. And the ebook is The Combative of Spiritual Warfare. And so is there anything else? How else can someone reach you, Malecia? On what form? How can they reach you?
You can go to maleciagriffin.com, Malecia Griffin.com, or Instagram. It is at Malecia L. Griffin, Malecia L. Griffin. And I'm very active on Instagram. And the link in my bio, you can access the link to book a consultation with me, or to purchase the e-guide, or to visit my website or the book and just learn more about me.
Wonderful. Well, I tell you, this has been such an exhilarating hour because, as I stated earlier in the beginning, as you began to speak on those things of your life, I resonated with a lot of things. I just turned 58 years old myself this month, and at 57, I was hit with such a whammy of who I really was. And I began to think back, and we were talking about fathers and things. And at 57, I was hit with the whammy that my biological dad is possibly not my dad, who I grew up with for all my life. But I love my dad, the dad that I knew to be that raised me and kept through me. But it also gave me a new revelation. It gave one, you was asking God to show you who you really are. If you ever ask God to show you who you really are, he will do it. And so that God give you, because when God gave me my answer, I was not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
But when he gave it to me, I received it. I received it because the man that was supposed to be my biological dad, his last name was Jones. My married name is Jones.
Look at God. Look.
When God showed me, when I tell you, when you ask God for something, you better be ready for what God gives you.
Come on.
And like I said, I'm 58. This was 57. I was age 57. And when I asked God to show me, and I was in the shower, I'm telling you, there's something about taking those spiritual baths, but I was taking a spiritual bath. And I was in God showed me, he said, you are named Carolyn Jones because your biological dad was a Jones.
Come on, it
You
never
are
left
who
you.
I made you to be.
Woo! He's so good. You can't make this stuff up.
When I tell you. And so now, mind you, it took nothing away from the love I have for my dad, who's my dad. But that's when I began to shift.
Yes.
And became my authentic me. And that's what, and like you said, Malecia, you touched on something. When you become who you really are, everything changes. Your relationships change, your careers change. That's when God gave me the go ahead. And that's when I got the green light on peace. Okay. So I'm saying to you tonight, and I don't know, it looks like you're frozen on me, Malecia. I hope that I can hear you, but it looks like your screen is frozen. Okay. But for whoever's out there that's still out that's hearing us tonight, know that you are not alone.
Mhm. That's
Malecia
it.
and I are here to stand in the testament for that. I want
Mhm.
to thank you, Malecia Griffin, and it's Gold Leaf Consulting. Is that correct,
Well,
Malecia?
that is my business is Gold Leaf Supreme LLC, but the consulting firm that I am getting ready to start, because right now I am doing everything under my name, Malecia Griffin, is actually Transpire Integrative Health Services.
Awesome,
Am I still
awesome. So
frozen?
everybody,
I
yeah,
don't
you
know.
are still
Okay.
frozen,
Okay.
but we're still talking. They can still get it, and it will work itself out. It will work
Mhm.
itself out. But and so reiterate. Say that again. Your last
Okay.
project.
Transpire Integrative Health Services. It is
Okay.
a coaching and consulting firm. What we will be doing is I'll be doing the trauma coaching for women, but they will also have an opportunity to launch into their own coaching programs for trauma, specifically in regards to what God is doing for them. There are so many layers to trauma. We cannot do it all. We cannot get it all.
Oh yes,
And
yes.
so each woman that has experienced trauma and that is ready to heal, God has given them the ability to go get other women free. And so what we will do at Transpire is not just coach, but after the women get through their coaching process, they will then go into consulting where they will learn how to create their own trauma programs to go help
Absolutely
women.
amazing. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you have your hands full with your little one on your lap and with your family. And we are just grateful for you having taken the opportunity to share with us tonight. And we wish you well in your best
Thank
endeavors. And we
you.
want to thank you, Malecia. And remember, follow Malecia Griffin on Instagram, follow her on Facebook, pick up her book, Year She Arrives. Go to Amazon and be looking out for Transpire Integrated
Health services.
Women Coach Health
Yes,
Services.
ma'am.
There you go. There you go. Well, thanks a lot. And we appreciate it, Malecia. You go and be great. As I say always, I take the words of Maya Angelou. I take it real wholeheartedly. If you're always trying to be normal, you'll never know how amazing you can be. So let's go be
Mhm.
amazing. And in my words, Carolyn Jones, chance of a lifetime coaching, move forward with confidence. Thanks, Malecia. Thank you all. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you.